So what's caffeine doing? Caffeine is causing the liberation of adrenaline from your adrenals, these two little marble-sized glands above your kidneys. That tends to activate the so-called sympathetic nervous system, make you a little bit more prone to move, bring some alertness to your body. Simultaneously, it's causing the release of norepinephrine and epinephrine from this little cluster of neurons called locus coeruleus that we talked about before. So the brain is being hosed with a little bit of epinephrine as we speak right now. In addition, it's triggering a dopamine increase, but not by triggering the release of dopamine directly. Caffeine increases the sensitivity of dopamine receptors. So whatever dopamine is floating around in your system and my system, the caffeine is amplifying that effect, not necessarily by making it a longer effect, by making the intensity a little bit higher. The other thing that caffeine does, and this is perhaps the most important one, is that it effectively prevents the action of a molecule called adenosine. Adenosine is a molecule that builds up the longer that you are awake. And then when you sleep, adenosine gets pushed back down to a minimal level. Adenosine essentially is a readout of fatigue overall. So if we were to stay up for 2 days, adenosine levels would be very high. So in terms of a practical tool, I do try and restrict my caffeine intake, or at least most of it, to the early part of the day. I'll stop drinking caffeine usually around 3 or 4 p.m. I don't drink any high amount of caffeine after 4 p.m. and generally not coffee. But when you wake up in the morning, depending on how well and how long you slept, your levels of adenosine might be zeroed out and you feel really alert, or you might have a small amount of adenosine hanging around. If you drink caffeine right away, let's just keep it simple. It essentially binds to the receptor that adenosine would normally occupy.
It's an antagonist.
It's an antagonist, but it's what we call a competitive agonist because it binds, so it's an agonist, but it outcompetes the adenosine, so the adenosine can't dock at those receptors. So that's great because you start to wake up. But then around 2 or 3 p.m., as that caffeine wears off, the adenosine that's still around binds to those receptors and you get the afternoon crash. So one way that you can avoid the afternoon crash, or at least offset quite a bit of it, is to wait 90 to 120 minutes after you wake up to ingest any caffeine. Adenosine will continue to be cleared from your system in the early part of the day.